Imagine standing in the heart of Venice, beneath the golden mosaics of St. Mark's Basilica. It's a monument to divine glory, yet its entire foundation is built upon a pile of raw pork and a daring high-stakes corpse snapping. In the year 828, the Venetian merchants didn't just walk into Alexandria. They executed one of the most audacious heists in human history. They stole the bones of an apostle, hiding the holy remains under layers of cabbage and swine to repel the Muslim guards who would dare touch the unclean meat. But here is the real mystery. Why was this act of grand larceny celebrated as a miracle? Why did the medieval world believe that stealing from God was the only way to prove you were chosen by him? Today, we are peeling back the gold leaf to reveal the dark, blood-soaked industry of Furta Sacra holy theft and how a 1,000-year-old crime spree created the Europe we know today. Stick around, because by the end of this journey, you will realize that the most sacred objects in history were often the ones with the dirtiest origins. We often picture Vikings as mindless destroyers, leaving nothing but ash in their wake, but the archaeological record tells a much more complicated story. A Viking raider. A golden reliquary from an Irish monastery was on the vessel for a Saintess Fingeret was high-end loot. However, something strange happened when these treasures crossed the North Sea. These barbarians became the accidental curators of Christian history, while many artifacts in mainland Europe were melted down for currency or destroyed during religious wars. The stolen goods buried in Viking mounds remained perfectly preserved. Think about the Randveig cascada, masterpiece of Scottish craftsmanship that only survived because a Norse woman decided it made a fashionable jewelry box. This wasn't just theft, it was a violent, unintended transfer of culture that bridged the gap between the pagan North and the Christian South. But while the Vikings stole for gold, the monks of Europe were about to start stealing for something much more powerful: spiritual monopoly. The year 1204 marks the darkest chapter in the history of the Crusades. The target wasn't the infidels in Jerusalem, but the crown jewel of Eastern Christendom, Constantinople. For 3 days, the Fourth Crusade turned into a massive, organized looting operation. This wasn't a battle. It was a clearance sale where everything was free if you had a sword. They stripped the Hagia Sophia of its silver, shattered priceless icons, and shipped boatloads of stolen art back to Western Europe. Venice was the primary beneficiary. Those 4 magnificent bronze horses galloping atop St. Mark's. They were ripped from the hippodrome of Constantinople. We have to ask, how did these soldiers of Christ justify robbing the very brothers they were sworn to protect? The answer lies in a twisted theological loophole. They claimed the Byzantines had become unworthy, and therefore the spirit of the art wanted to move west. It was the ultimate gaslighting campaign in art history. To understand the medieval mind, you have to understand Furta Sacra. In a world where a town's economy depended entirely on the number of pilgrims it could attract, having a celebrity saint was like having a Fortune 500 company. If your monastery was poor, you didn't just pray. How did you hire a professional thief? The logic was chillingly simple. If a saint didn't want to be stolen, they would have used their divine power to stop the thief. Therefore, a successful robbery was seen as the saintess' explicit permission to move to a new city. It was a holy job market where the relics chose their new employers based on who was daring enough to snatch them. This created a secret underground network of monk thieves and relic brokers, all operating under the guise of divine providence. Consider the case of Saint Foy in Conquest, France. In the 9th century, a monk from Conquest spent 10 years undercover at a rival monastery in Again. His mission: to infiltrate their ranks, gain their trust, and eventually steal the skull of a young girl saint named Foy. When he finally made his move and brought the skull back to Conquest, the town didn't hide the crime, they bragged about it. They encased the stolen skull in a terrifyingly beautiful, jewel-encrusted golden statue that stares at you with a haunting, unblinking gaze. The theft worked. Conquest transformed from a backwater village into a massive pilgrimage hub, raking in unimaginable wealth. The statue of Saint Foy is a masterpiece of art, but it is also a literal monument to a 10-year-long con job. It forces us to confront a heavy truth. Much of what we consider heritage is actually the fruit of a successful crime. Now we reach the most uncomfortable question in art history. Is theft sometimes a form of salvation? During the Iconoclasm, or the later French Revolution, Countless religious artworks were smashed by mobs who saw them as idols. Many of the pieces we marvel at today only exist because they were safely tucked away in a thief's collection or a foreign city's treasury. Does the act of stealing an object strip it of its meaning, or does it give it a new, more resilient life? When we look at the treasures in the British Museum or the Louvre, we are looking at a modern version of Furta Sacra, the idea that some institutions are better at protecting history than the people the history belongs to. The line between a protector and a plunderer has never been thinner. The story of medieval sacred theft isn't just a quirky footnote in history. It's a mirror reflecting our own complicated relationship with the past. Venice became a superpower because of a stolen body. Conquest became a landmark because of a stolen skull. These crimes were the engines of cultural evolution. But as we move into an era of repatriation and decolonization, the open loop we started with remains. Can a holy end ever justify a criminal means? If you found out the most beautiful thing you owned was stolen, would the beauty still matter to you? Should museums return these sacred spoils to the ruins they were taken from, or is their place now part of a global story? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments. Was it sacred theft or just sacred greed? If this journey into the dark side of history fascinated you, you'll want to watch our next video on the secret maps that led to the world's last undiscovered treasures. Thank you for watching. And remember, history isn't just what we remember, it's what we manage to keep.